Welcome to this run-through of what's new in Leapfrog 2025.3. My name is Rachel Murta. I'm the line manager for geology, geostats and data science at Seequent, and I'm going to run through all the new features in the latest release. For more detail on these features, please have a look at the release notes and the help documentation. One of the more notable additions in this release is the new statistics item at the bottom of the project tree. This is where all of your saved statistical graphs and table of statistics will be stored. To open it, you double click or right click and open. As you can see, I have nothing saved at the moment, so we'll come back to this once I create something. When I right click and select univariate graphs, you can see the new option to filter by category. When you change the settings of this graph, you can now have an option to save those. And this is where that information gets saved as a graph in your statistics tab. Another notable addition to statistics is in the table of statistics, you now have the option to add more inputs for the purposes of comparisons. So if you click the plus button and select the resource model and select the column that you want to compare, the addition of statistic graph settings allows the user to adjust the sizes and the rotations of these labels. These are general settings that will be applied to all graphs. Imago integration has been extended into the correlation set. Click on the Imago icon and click on a drill hole and your core photography will come up in a panel. Other changes include the optionality to change model units, as well as being able to leave these parameters blank will widen the search scope of your imagery from Imago. First up, we have a new category simplify composite. So you select your desired lithology and you get some options to create a simplified composite in this dialog. Staying under composites, going into the new economic composite and the compositing tab, you can see some new options have been added to the thickness method. You now have the option to use a structural trend. A number of improvements have been made to the plan drill hole group, namely the hole ID label position can now be set to start or end of the hole. Show depth markers is now configurable for in-scene information. When a hole is queried in the scene, new information has been added to the scene details, including the note or comment and the downhole depth. When you export the information, a new query filter is now available. When creating a new distance function, the planned drill hole group is now available to be used. And finally, publishing to Evo now includes the ability to publish the planned drill hole group. Moving on to structural modeling, the StereoNet has had some changes to the layout, making it a little bit cleaner and tidier, bringing in some information here and displaying some categories. We also have a new option to use a display filter. So selecting something like dip and checking on the enable filter slider, setting that to something will tidy up your display, allowing you to understand a lot more about the data. In the structural trend, where you might have a mesh that has some attributes, you can now create a query filter based on those attributes and use that in the structural trend. The other change that's been made here is the clustering settings have been moved out of the visualization tab, and they can now be found on the model itself. So for an intrusion, they can be found under the trend setting and in the structural trend here. Similarly, they can be found in the trend setting of the RBF numeric model. The next change to highlight is in the blending trend type. You can now include a global trend to this trend type. For Evo users who have driver ellipsoids in a Leapfrog project, you now have the option to create calculations on the ellipsoids. You can create a variable, numeric, and category calculation columns. You can also now analyze the information using the statistics panel as well. Improvements to cross-sections are mostly focused on the long section type, where you have the input as an alignment that contains chainage. The option will actually default to line selection, and you can choose where you want to start your long section along that alignment. The major change, however, is in the addition of being able to add a strip view directly into the long section type under the plan view folders. When you have added a strip view, you can see a new option called section line, and this is where all of the display options for that section line are contained. A couple of things to note in this space is where you would like to label your colors. You now have a new option to show minimum distance, and with options to show units and a plus or minus sign. You can also directly click and drag the end of section labels in the strip view itself. One final addition to note is under the section display options itself, a new option of projected distance has been added for the X and Y axes. When you are using an input of an alignment with chainage, you can now automatically add the projected distance of that chainage onto the section itself. Some changes to highlight in the estimation folder is the relocation of some of the right-click menu options and the addition of a new domained estimation folder where those options are now contained. Another change to note is the option to run conditional simulation is now found as a right-click option rather than being an evaluation onto a regular block model. When creating a conditional simulation run itself, you'll notice there is a slight change in the Outputs tab with the introduction of grade reproduction thresholds. Several improvements have been made to the SWOT plot, including being able to visualize coordinates for each data point, filter blocks by domain category or estimation pass, view sample counts within each swath, and set coordinate limits to focus on a specific area. Some Evo-related data management changes to highlight include when you publish, you can now choose a folder in which to publish to. When importing from Evo and a stage has been set, you will see the stage label in this column. And finally, where you have a number of objects imported from Evo and you want to do a bulk reload, you are now able to do that.